John Bud Allen was born in the Midwest before settling in Phoenix, Arizona. There, he married Samantha Allen. The two shared a small rented home, crowded with members of an extended family. One of them was 10-year-old Amy Deal. Aim was Samantha's cousin and John's legal ward. She had once lived with her birth mother, Shirley, but eventually came under her aunt's care. That shift marked the beginning of a quiet, growing concern. Neighbors and school staff noticed things. They saw Amy walking barefoot across sun-scorched pavement. They saw her forced to complete exhausting chores as punishment. Sometimes she ate things that weren't meant to be eaten. Once, a report claimed she had been locked inside the trunk of a car. Whispers began. Teachers spoke up. Neighbors voiced worry. But inside that home, nothing changed. Over time, John's role as guardian blurred. It became something else. Controlling, punishing, and increasingly cruel. Then came July 2011. Phoenix was suffocating under triple-digit heat, 103 degrees Fahrenheit. On July 11th, Aim was made to run outside for over an hour, back and forth. In the sun, no shade, no break. Then came jumping jacks, more strain, more heat. When it was over, John and Samantha placed her inside a plastic storage box. It was barely the size of a suitcase, 31 inches long, 11 inches wide, 11 inches deep. They locked it shut. Inside, there was no room to shift, no air to breathe, no chance to cool down. Aim lost consciousness. The reason given by prosecutors began with a stolen popsicle. The adults blamed Amy. They treated her as if she did not belong. They made her wear shame and blame. When officers arrived on July 12th, they found her in a hot garage inside that locked box. The air inside was hot and stale. Her body showed signs of serious mistreatment. She had passed away. Her skin had marks and was soiled. Why was she not helped sooner? Many people had noted her injuries and poor care, yet no one stopped the harmful treatment until she passed away. On July 27, 2011, John, Samantha, Aim's aunt, Cynthia Stoltzman, and grandmother Judith Deal were arrested. Charges included an intentional ending of a life, planning harm, and multiple counts of harmful treatment of a child. Bail was set at $1 million. Cynthia took a plea deal and was given 24 years in prison. Judith received 10 years. Aim's father, David Deal, faced separate charges for harmful treatment of a child. In November 2017, John went to trial. A jury of 10 women and 2 men heard detailed testimony. They listened to witness accounts, expert findings, and recorded statements. They found him responsible for the intentional ending of a life, 3 counts of harmful treatment of a child, and planning to mistreat a child. On November 17, 2017, the judge gave him the most severe punishment under state law. The jury decision led to that result. Arizona law allowed a method that ends a life under court order. Records show no apology or tears from John that day. He awaited the state-ordered ending. John and Samantha appealed. In 2019, the Arizona Supreme Court denied their challenge. That allowed the state-ordered ending process to continue. John remains in the part of the prison for people awaiting that outcome. The next victim was terminally ill, barely able to speak. But the real danger wasn't his diagnosis. Wendy Elizabeth Ooa was born in the United States on August 6, 1970. She married Joseph Joe Andriano in January 1994. After marriage, she used his surname. In 1998, Joe received a diagnosis of adenoid cystic carcinoma. This is a rare and aggressive condition in the salivary glands. Over time, the illness reached his lungs. Doctors said his outlook was very poor. By 2000, Joe's condition had worsened. He underwent chemotherapy. He relied more on Wendy for daily care. She managed an apartment complex and looked after their 2 young children, Nicholas, about 3, and Ashley, 2. During this time, Wendy began spending time at bars. She also started relationships outside her marriage. This suggested she felt unhappy. She tried to get life insurance on Joe. She asked friends to pretend to be him. No policy was finalized. Still, this raised concerns about her intentions. On the late evening of October 7, 2000, the family returned home from a backyard gathering. Around 2:15 a.m. on October 8th, Wendy called Chris, a co-worker and neighbor. She asked Chris to watch the children. She said she was taking Joe to the doctor. Chris arrived and found Joe in the living room. He was unconscious in a curled-up position. He was vomiting and struggling to breathe. Joe complained about the delay of help. Wendy appeared tense and distant. Paramedics were called via 911. When they arrived, Wendy turned them away. She said Joe had a do not resuscitate order. As they prepared to leave, she appeared to cry and asked for privacy. She then shut the door. Shortly after, she left by the back door. Chris later noted she seemed soaked and wore a fresh shirt. He found this odd and concerning. About an hour later, Wendy called 911 again. Paramedics returned. They found a disturbing scene. Joe lay face down with severe injuries. Nearby were a broken bar stool with red spatters, a sharp weapon, pieces of a lamp, and a belt. The medical examiner later reported Joe had at least 23 impacts to the back of his head. Then there was a deep cut that severed a major artery in his neck area. He also had injuries on his hands and wrists that suggested he had tried to protect himself. Investigators found that Wendy had bought sodium azide under a false name. About 20.8 grams of it went missing. Traces of the chemical appeared in soup bowls at home. Her fingerprints were on related packaging. Capsules labeled as herbal supplements held sodium azide. Contaminated cotton swabs and gloves appeared in her storage shed. A detective studied red patterns. They indicated Joe was hit while lying down. The belt and the neck wound seemed added after other injuries. Meanwhile, Wendy was seen outside with wet hair and a new shirt. She spoke calmly with law enforcement. When she was arrested, she told a co-worker to hide items from her office. Her adoptive father later told police she admitted causing the neck wound. On August 23, 2004, Wendy went on trial in Maricopa County Superior Court. The prosecution questioned her motives. They said she planned to use the chemical to cause Joe's passing. They said she kept help away, then used the bar stool to inflict blunt injuries that led to his passing. Finally, they said, she cut his neck to ensure he would not survive. They linked this to attempts at life insurance and a pending lawsuit against Joe's doctors. They also noted her outside relationships and efforts to suggest someone else was Joe during medical exams. Wendy testified in her defense for 9 days. She said Joe had abused her over time, physically, mentally, and in other ways. She said she feared for her safety. She spoke of a failed attempt to help Joe end his suffering using sodium azide. She claimed Joe became angry when he learned of her affairs. She said they struggled over a sharp weapon. She said she struck him with the stool in self-defense. She insisted he later harmed himself to cause the neck wound. Experts on battered person dynamics supported her account. She spoke with emotion about the abuse she said she endured. The prosecution argued her account was invented. They pointed to her insurance attempts as evidence she planned to benefit from Joe's passing. After about 2.5 hours of deliberation, the jury found her guilty of first-degree charges for ending someone's life on November 18, 2004. They also found 2 factors that increased her sentence. First, they said the act was very cruel. Second, they said it was done for financial gain. On December 22, 2004, the jury gave capital punishment. Wendy appealed in 2007. She argued jurors were biased by hearing about her outside relationships and insurance efforts. She said jury instructions were wrong. She wanted permission to consider a lesser charge such as taking a life without intent. In July 2007, the Arizona Supreme Court rejected her arguments. They kept both the conviction and the maximum penalty in place. Her efforts to challenge the outcome continued. In 2012, her attorneys accused the lead prosecutor of bias by using stereotypes about women. As of early 2018, she remained one of a few women in Arizona serving her time on Roe in the Lumley unit of Perryville Prison. Now, how did a friendly shop owner become the focus of a DNA manhunt? Trent Christopher Benson was born on October 7, 1971, in South Korea. His birth parents left him. He lived on the streets until he was 3. Then an orphanage took him in. That same year, David and Elizabeth Benson adopted him. They lived in Boston, Minnesota. They already had several adopted children. In Boston, he joined high school activities. He ran track. He sang in choir. He led the swim team. Classmates said he was outgoing and friendly. After high school, he went to Minnesota State University Moorhead from 1990 to 1992. He had one minor legal issue, a shoplifting arrest. There were no serious charges. Some people said he could be pushy when pursuing romantic interests, but nothing showed he would harm others. After college, he worked at a used car dealership as a salesman. In 1996, he moved to Mesa, Arizona. He kept working in car sales. He married Michelle Tohoney. They had a son. The marriage ended. Benson said his ex-wife struggled with drinking. He moved into his parents' condo in a well-off Mesa neighborhood. Friends and neighbors saw him as friendly. They said he helped others. He even took part in the Homeowners Association. By late 2007, Benson opened Lindsay Water and Ice, a small store in a strip mall. His parents helped pay for it. On the surface, he seemed like a normal businessman. Yet over time, a very different side appeared. Between 2004 and 2007, he harmed several vulnerable women who offered paid companionship. Some of these incidents ended with the women losing their lives. How could a neighborly man become so dangerous? The cases raise that question. On November 1st, 2004, he left a strip club and met 21-year-old Elisa Marie Beck. She agreed to paid companionship. Later, she said she was unhappy with how he behaved. He reacted with sudden aggressiveness. He hit her head against the steering wheel. He cut off her breathing until she lost consciousness. He left her partially clothed in an alley less than a mile from his home. She did not survive. Almost 3 years passed before the next event where someone lost their life. On October 14, 2007, he met 44-year-old Karen Jane Campbell. They agreed on payment for companionship. When she asked for more money, he got angry. Her body was found in a side street 10 days later. She was without signs of life. The medical exam could not say exactly what caused her to stop living. It showed severe harm to her body and that she could not defend herself. Between those two cases, he forced at least 2 other women into unwanted intimacy and harmed them. In August 2007, he forced a 47-year-old woman into his car against her will. He injured her and then let her go. In November 2007, he took a 35-year-old woman to an abandoned building. He forced unwanted intimacy and caused serious physical harm. She survived. Later, DNA tests linked all these incidents. At first, the 2004 and 2007 losses of life were handled separately by police. Then DNA evidence connected them. Mesa and Phoenix police took notice. They learned he had past arrests in 1997 and 2001 for seeking paid companionship. Investigators got his DNA from a discarded cigarette butt. That matched the samples from each scene. The match tied him to every case. On May 14, 2008, police arrested him. He faced very serious charges. The list included 2 counts of first-degree acts that ended lives, 2 counts of forced, aggressive, intimate acts, 3 counts of taking people against their will, and 1 count of forced intimate act. His arrest shocked people in Mesa and Boston. His ex-wife called him emotionally abusive, but still found it hard to accept what he was accused of. During questioning, Benson admitted he forced intimate acts on some victims. He claimed he had gaps in memory about what happened afterward. He also suggested someone else might have helped in at least one incident. That person was never found. His trial began 3 years later. His lawyers tried to trace his early life in South Korea. They hoped that his childhood, being left on the streets, might explain or lessen what he did. He pleaded not guilty on all counts. In September 2011, the jury found him guilty of 2 counts of ending lives on purpose and all other charges. They did not see reasons to reduce his punishment. They recommended the maximum sentence allowed by law for the life-ending acts. He also received an extra 135 years in prison for the forced intimate acts. The prosecution focused on how aggressive the incidents were. They stressed the DNA proof. They noted that Benson denied responsibility at first. The defense argued he had mental gaps and past trauma. The court decided his actions were planned and cruel. Soon after, he appealed. In July 2013, the Arizona Supreme Court reviewed the case. They found no errors in how the trial was run. They agreed that the evidence and jury instructions were correct. They upheld his convictions and sentences, including the maximum penalty for ending lives. As of mid-2025, he remains on row in a high-security prison in Arizona. The next individual said, "You're all going to regret this." Hours later, they did. Eric Boyston was born in 1980. Records from his trial and appeals say little about his early years. By February 2004, he had no job and no steady home. He moved between his grandmother Mary's apartment and his cousin Shantae's house in Phoenix. His time with family was tense. He often felt anger and resentment toward the people he stayed with. One night before the main events, he became very angry. He argued with Shantae and another cousin, Tanisha, about having to stay at his grandmother's place. On the evening of February 1st, 2004, Eric stayed at Shantae's home. The next morning, his girlfriend, Alexandria Kelly, drove him to his grandmother's apartment. As soon as he saw Tanisha, he said, "I'm hurt. I can't believe you did me like this. You all are going to regret this." Later that day, he sat in Alexandria's car in a parking lot and took a phone call that upset him. When Alexandria refused to drive him to meet that caller, he pulled out a revolver and fired at her. The bullets hit her chest, back, and side. She survived but became paralyzed from the waist down. After Alexandria left, Eric ran to his grandmother Mary's apartment. He said out loud that it was time to deal with everyone who wronged him. He burst inside and found Mary's son, Alexander. He used the gun on Alexander's arm. When Alexander stumbled outside, Eric used the gun again. Alexander did not survive. Back inside, Eric used the gun on Mary 3 times. She did not continue living either. When his great-aunt Shirley Jones came out of her apartment, he threatened her and used the gun on her back. She survived that. After the gun was empty, he returned and got into a fistfight with family friend Timothy Wright. Then he drew a sharp object and used it on Timothy 9 times. One wound in the chest led to Timothy not surviving. Eric then fled but was arrested later that night. He was charged with 3 counts of intentional ending of life and 2 counts of attempted intentional ending of life. The jury found him responsible for all 3 losses and for harming 2 people. One of the harm survivors was Alexandria. Significant factors in sentencing included multiple serious acts and the cruel way he caused pain and suffering. The jury recommended capital punishment for each life taken. His defense said he had an intellectual disability with IQ scores from 59 to 65. The court decided he did not meet the standard for that defense. In April 2013, the Arizona Supreme Court reviewed his appeal and upheld the convictions and the maximum punishment. In addition to those sentences, the court added more prison time for the attempts to end life that did not succeed. The next individual feared losing her, so he tried to remove the one person she couldn't live without. But before we move on to the next case, consider subscribing for more stories like this. Derek Don Chappell was born March the 21st, 1982 in Phoenix, Arizona. Court documents list 1982 as his birth year. He grew up in a modest working-class home with his parents and younger siblings. People described him as quiet and reserved. Those traits hid deeper tensions. Little is known about difficult experiences in his childhood. In his late teens, a pattern of possessiveness and emotional ups and downs began to show. In the fall of 2003, he met Crystal Shackelford. She moved into his family home with her 2-year-old son, Devin Justice Shackelford. At first, the relationship seemed promising. Soon it became strained. He was 21 then. He grew more jealous of Crystal. He also felt jealousy toward her bond with her son. He began to monitor phones and visits. His mood darkened as jealousy took hold. On December 10th, 2003, a serious incident happened. Chappell watched Devin alone at home. While changing the toddler's diaper, he pressed a hand on the child's neck and shoulders until breathing became difficult and the face turned red. Crystal rushed home in panic. A pediatrician later noted marks consistent with restricted breathing. In a moment of clarity, Chappell called Crystal. He was tearful and said, "I hurt Devin." Crystal moved out with her son right away. Child Protective Services then limited his contact, but his obsession did not lessen. Crystal's fear grew. By early March 2004, Crystal and Chappell had reunited and were engaged again. Beneath the surface, the earlier incident still weighed heavily. Chappell feared Crystal would have to choose between him and her son. Crystal said, "I can't live without Devin." His fear of being left grew stronger after hearing this. In the early hours of March 11th, 2004, Crystal woke to silence in the apartment. Devin was missing. She searched and found the child's body in the neighbor's pool. There were no signs of life. Investigators focused on Chappell. Surveillance footage placed him near the pool. A heavy stone like those from his parents' yard held the gate open. He had key access to Crystal's apartment. A medical exam showed the child lost life due to immersion in water. The evidence pointed to planning. When questioned, Chappell admitted what happened. He said he took Devin to the pool and held the child underwater until the child stopped moving. Then he left without helping. Under pressure, he first tried to blame Crystal by saying he acted on her instructions. Investigators saw this as unsupported. They saw jealousy turn to intense anger as the motive. At the first trial, he faced 2 charges. One was for the earlier harmful action against the child. The other was for the taking of the child's life. The trial began August 6th, 2007, in a Phoenix courtroom. Prosecutors laid out the case. They presented the December incident. They shared the pool surveillance. They argued an accident was not plausible. They cited his own statements. Jurors heard evidence of his jealousy. Defense attorneys said he was overwhelmed and emotionally unstable. The evidence weighed more heavily. On November 14th, 2007, the jury returned a decision. They found him responsible on both charges. In the penalty phase, they noted 3 serious factors: the prior harmful action, the extreme cruelty of taking the child's life, and the child's young age under 15. The law required the most severe sentence, meaning he would not continue living. On August 3, 2010, the Arizona Supreme Court reviewed the case. It upheld the conviction and sentence as lawful under state law. At his sentencing hearing, he spoke last. He said, "I am sorry for everything I did. I hope my family can someday find peace. I hope Devin's mother can forgive me." He looked at Crystal and added, I take full responsibility." The next man ran off with a 14-year-old and left 3 people lifeless behind him. Frank Winfield Anderson was born on April 4th, 1948. Little is known about his early life or family. By the mid-1990s, he lived in Lancaster, California. He managed a trailer park there. He was 48 and married to Dorothy, who had a disability. In July 1996, he disappeared. He left Dorothy behind. He left with Kimberly Lane, who was 14. They met at the trailer park. They began hitchhiking east together. By early August 1996, they reached Laughlin, Nevada. There they met Robert Poison, age 21, a drifter. The 3 then went to Golden Valley, Arizona, a remote part of Mojave County. They found shelter with Lita Kagan, her son Robert Delahunt, 15, and Roland Ware, 50. Over several days, Anderson lied about having ties to the mafia. He told Lane she was to be a goddaughter. He said this made her special. On the night of August 13, 1996, Lane lured Delahunt to a small trailer under the pretense of a friendly visit. Anderson and Poison were already inside, waiting. When Delahunt entered, they ambushed him. Anderson inflicted a severe injury to his neck. Poison then worsened the wound and struck him with a sharp kitchen object. Delahunt did not survive. A few hours later, Poison used a firearm on Lita Kagan's head while Anderson held a lantern to light the scene. Kagan did not survive. Then they turned to Roland Ware. They used a firearm and beat him. Poison struck him with a rifle butt. Anderson held the lantern and handed over a cinder block for the final blow. Ware did not survive. The motive was simple. The hosts had shown kindness and given shelter. The trio grew unhappy with their living situation. They decided to leave with Ware's pickup truck and take other items. They felt entitled to those things. A few days later in Illinois, police stopped Anderson driving Ware's pickup. He was arrested. After a 3rd round of questioning, he admitted his full role. At first, he denied planning to take lives. He claimed he acted to protect Lane from harm. His own statements showed he took part in all acts. His trial began January 12, 1998, in Mojave County Superior Court under Judge James E. Chavez. He faced charges of taking property by force, planning to take lives, and taking the lives of 3 people. During closing arguments, his defense said he was a bystander forced into it by Poison. The jury did not accept that. After 3 hours of deliberation, they found him fully responsible. On January 21, 1998, he was found guilty on all counts. By June 2, 1998, the court gave him the highest penalty for each life taken. He also received additional prison terms for taking property and for the planning. In 2000, Arizona's Supreme Court overturned the verdict due to issues in jury selection. A new trial took place, and in 2005 it produced the same verdicts and sentences. Anderson said he intended to marry Lane. He admitted he used lies, including false claims of mafia ties, to make Lane feel special. This shows his mindset from the start. Could he have avoided the highest penalty by speaking against Poison? Possibly. He did not do so. He remained defiant and insisted he acted only to protect Lane. The jury rejected that explanation. The next individual feared losing custody. So he made a decision no sibling ever should. Shad Daniel Armstrong was born in 1972. He grew up in a difficult setting that shaped his later choices. In 1996, he lived in Oklahoma with his girlfriend Rosette Rusty Medina and his sister Farah. The 3, plus another person, broke into a home in Cota, Texas. After hearing that people had linked him to that break-in, Armstrong left Oklahoma. He went to Tucson, Arizona. There, he, Medina's young daughter, and Farah shared an apartment. Farah soon met Frank Williams and they became engaged. Money troubles and personal conflicts, especially between Armstrong and Medina, led Armstrong to move with Medina and the children into a trailer owned by David Dugan, a friend, in early 1998. Why would a brother plan to end his sister's life? In January 1998, Farah and Frank visited her parents in Oklahoma. They said they intended to turn themselves in over the Texas break-in. Farah planned to share Armstrong's location, hoping for a lighter sentence. Armstrong learned of this. He feared arrest, losing custody of his child, and time in prison. Under that pressure, he and Dugan began to plan an ending of life for Farah and Frank. Days before the meeting, they dug a shallow spot near the trailer. On February 19, 1998, Armstrong lured Farah and Frank outside. He promised to pay overdue bills and fix Dugan's car. Inside the trailer, he had set up plastic sheets on the walls. Garbage bags and old blankets were in place. A shotgun loaded with deer slugs was ready. When Farah and Frank arrived, they spoke as if nothing was wrong. Then Armstrong picked up the shotgun. He shot Frank in the chest. He shot Farah in the chest and head. Then he shot Frank again at head level. After that, Armstrong and Dugan hid what happened. They wrapped the bodies. They moved them to the prepared spot. They partially covered them. They dumped items with DNA on it in the desert. Then they left Arizona with Medina and the children. Medina later saw red stains in the trailer. She saw Armstrong cleaning jewelry with red spots. He said, "I did it." He admitted he shot them in head and chest. Authorities soon found the dumped items, traces of DNA, and the remains near Dugan's trailer. A warrant was issued in June 1998. By January 1999, the investigation was advancing. Armstrong and Medina fled to Odessa, Texas. An episode of America's Most Wanted featured the case. Medina was arrested and identified Armstrong. He was found sleeping in a laundry room on January 18, 1999. In March 2000, a Pima County jury found Armstrong responsible for 2 counts of ending a life in the first degree and 1 count of planning an ending of life. The trial lasted about 47 days. On March the 10th, the verdict came in. The judge gave Armstrong capital punishment for each count of ending a life unlawfully. He also gave 25 years to life for the planning count. In 2004, the Arizona Supreme Court upheld those sentences. After the Ring vs. Arizona decision in 2002, which required juries to specify factors for capital punishment, his case was sent back for review. In 2006, a new jury again gave him capital punishment. They used the factor of multiple lives ended. They did not use the money motive factor. Next are 3 friends. Patrick Wade Barup was born on April 2, 1977. Public records give little on his family or early life. He kept things private until his mid-20s. By the early 2000s, he lived near Phoenix. He had at least 1 earlier conviction for a serious physical offense. That record later affected his sentence. On February 25, 2002, Jessica Nelson thought her roommate and partner, 40-year-old Mark Mathis, had taken money and a ring from her. She asked Sean Gaines, Jeremy Johnson, and Barup to help. They decided to confront Mathis and settle the matter themselves. They took weapons. Gaines had a shotgun, Johnson a baseball bat, and Barup a sharp weapon. They met Mathis on a backyard patio. Johnson struck Mathis about 20 to 25 times. Barup stood close with the weapon. He blocked any chance for Mathis to get away. He was not just watching. He held Mathis in place while the beating went on. Afterward, they put Mathis into a car trunk. He groaned in pain during the ride. They drove to a remote road near Crown King. His chance to survive was slim. To hide what happened, Nelson and Gaines took off his clothes and cut off a finger. Barup used wire clippers for that. Then they pushed his body off a cliff. Gaines fired 2 shots to make sure Mathis would not survive. A few weeks later, Barup told his ex-wife, Sheena Ramsey, about his role. He said he helped beat a man over a stolen ring. He spoke about cutting off the finger. He seemed amused as he told it. Those details were very harmful to his case. Barup was arrested in 2002. He faced charges of first-degree intentional taking of life and unlawful confinement. His trial was in 2007 in Maricopa County Superior Court, before Judge Warren J. Granville. Prosecutors said he armed himself, held Mathis down, helped cause Mathis's passing, and helped hide the body. They noted his earlier offense and the cruel way the event unfolded. Those points worked against any leniency. Barup denied taking part. He said he was elsewhere or mistaken for someone else, but Nelson, Johnson, and Gaines all spoke against him. They said he joined the harmful acts. The jury found him guilty of unlawful confinement and intentional taking of life. They decided the harms outweighed any reasons to lessen the penalty. He received the maximum sentence under state law. He appealed automatically. In 2009, the Arizona High Court confirmed the conviction and sentence. They agreed the evidence showed he helped confine Mathis and intended to cause his passing. His past convictions and the disturbing nature of the case weighed heavily in the sentencing. He remains on Arizona's row for those with the maximum penalty. Nelson and Johnson pleaded guilty. Each got 14 years for taking a life plus time for unlawful confinement, served at the same time. Gaines is still waiting for sentencing. Patrick Barup went from a private individual to someone facing the harshest state penalty. He was 25 at the time of the event. He was 30 when sentenced in 2007. As of now, he is 48. He never fired the shots that ended Mathis's life. Still, his active role and his attitude led to the highest sentence. Future appeals or legal changes might affect his case. Only time will show if anything changes. The next individuals came for $300. They left behind something far worse. Steve Allen Boggs took a role in a white supremacist armed group called the Imperial Royal Guard. He was chief of staff. His friend Christopher Hargrave was assistant chief of staff. There is little public information about his birth date, family, or childhood. Late on May 19, 2002, Boggs and Hargrave drove to a Jack in the Box in Mesa, Arizona. Hargrave had recently lost his job there. They used Hargrave's uniform to look like staff. They brought a gun and planned to take money. They entered around 11:15 p.m. inside. They found 3 employees, Beatriz Alvarado, 31, Kenneth Brown, 27, and Fausto Jimenez, 30. They forced them to lie on the floor. Then they emptied their pockets. Next, they made them go into the freezer. There, Bogs shouted hateful words. He shot each person multiple times. Hargrave also fired the weapon inside the freezer. A bystander later found Alvarado moaning by a back door. She later lost her life from 2 gunshot wounds to the back. Jimenez had dialed 911. He lost his life inside after 3 shots to the back. Brown was discovered inside the freezer. He lost his life from 2 gunshot wounds, 1 to the chest. Bogs and Hargrave took about $300 from the registers before they left. 2 days later, Bogs pawned a Taurus handgun. Ballistics linked that gun to shell casings from the scene. DNA on the weapon matched Hargrave's and did not rule out Bogs. Hargrave was caught using one victim's ATM card. This put both under police scrutiny. When detectives interviewed Bogs, he first gave conflicting accounts. He later admitted involvement. He said the act was driven by hate as well as taking money. Was money the real motive? No. They did take cash. Bogs confirmed that hate was the main reason. The hateful language during the act shows it was more than taking money. The prosecution described it as a hate-motivated act marked by cruelty. The case went to trial in Maricopa County. The jury found Bogs guilty on 3 counts of first-degree homicide. During sentencing, they noted several aggravating factors. Taking money was one, multiple victims was another, and especially cruel and depraved behavior was another. On May 12, 2005, Bogs received capital punishment. He retains the right to appeal. Bogs appealed to the Arizona Supreme Court. He challenged various legal points, including his ability to present evidence in his favor. In April 2008, the Arizona Supreme Court upheld his conviction and sentence. As of mid-2025, he remains on Arizona's list of those awaiting their final sentence. No date is set for carrying it out. Up next is a casual meetup, a remote road, a motive no one saw coming. Jonathan Ian Burns grew up in Arizona. Public records show he was about 29 when he was taken into custody in late 2007. Details about his family, parents, siblings, childhood, are not in news reports. In the months before the incident, he worked as a mechanic in Mesa. He had past issues involving weapons, but nothing suggested what would follow. In late 2007, he arranged a meeting with 19-year-old Jackie Hartman. She expected a casual outing for coffee or a light meal. Instead, he led her into a desert area under the guise of a romantic evening. There, he forced himself on her. She did not make it out alive. He left her body in a remote spot with minimal covering. A grand jury charged him in December 2007 with several offenses: taking her without permission, a non-consensual act, and intentionally causing her not to survive. There was no full confession. Still, forensic and other evidence formed a strong case. His trial began in late 2010 in Maricopa County Superior Court. Prosecutors described a man who hid dangerous intentions behind charm. They presented lab reports, witness statements about his behavior before and after the meeting, and a detailed account of what happened that night. During cross-examination, he said he had a gap in memory. He claimed he and Hartman left the restaurant and walked when he blacked out. The jury did not accept that claim. On December 16, 2010, the jury found him guilty on all counts: past weapon issues, taking her without permission, non-consensual act, and intentional ending of life. At a separate hearing, jurors took only a few hours before choosing capital punishment. He received that sentence for the intentional ending of life charge, plus extra time for the other counts. The court viewed him as dangerous and unlikely to change. He filed multiple appeals up to the Arizona Supreme Court and petitioned the U.S. Supreme Court by mid-2021. None succeeded. By June 2025, he remained confined on Roe at Arizona State Prison in Florence Central Unit. The next 9-year-old's final question shattered a courtroom. Jason Eugene Bush was born on August 11, 1974, in La Grande, Oregon. He later lived in Meadview, Arizona. There, he worked as National Director of Operations for Minutemen American Defense. Earlier, he had links to Aryan nations. In the late 1990s, he took part in illegal acts. In 1997, he was suspected in a fatal incident involving an associate from that group. That same year, authorities jailed him for taking a car without permission and for having a firearm when not allowed. Those convictions added up and made later penalties harsher. After he left prison in 2003, he moved to Sandpoint, Idaho. Some reports say he may have been involved in other fatal incidents in 1997. One witness said he showed up at homes covered in red. He claimed he had just finished taking care of some business. On May 30th, 2009, Bush joined Shauna Ford and Albert Gaxiola in entering a home by force. The residents were Raul Flores Jr., age 29, and his daughter, Brisenia, age 9. They wore camouflage and dark paint on their faces. They pretended to be law officers. They said they were looking for people who had run from the law. Inside, Bush told Raul, "Don't take this personal, but this bullet has your name on it." Then he fired a weapon at Raul. Raul's life ended. Next, Bush shot at Raul's wife, Gina Gonzalez, twice. She lay still and pretended to be out of movement. Their young daughter, Brisenia, woke up. She asked, "Why did you shoot my dad?" She was crying. Bush reloaded slowly, ignored her plea, and fired at her at close range. Her life ended. After that, they took cheap jewelry from the home. They left briefly. Then Bush came back inside and shot at Gina again. She fired back. She hit Bush in the leg. Then the group left the scene. Bush stayed away for 10 days. On June 11th, 2009, authorities found him at his girlfriend's home. He claimed he was an undercover military person shot while on duty. After about 4 hours of questions, he admitted his role. He drew a map of the Flores home. He marked where each person was when the harm occurred. He said his partners had threatened his family if he did not join them. Ford's group aimed to enter homes they believed held cash and illegal items. They wanted to take those items to support their anti-immigration agenda. Text messages from Gaxiola to Ford soon after the incident said, "Cops on scene, lay low." Ford replied, "No worries, all good, competition gone." This suggested they aimed not only to take valuables, but also to remove someone they saw as a rival in illegal substance activity. Gina Gonzalez described what happened. She said she heard Bush name Rutgers before he fired at her. She watched her husband and daughter lose their lives. Her description of Brisenia's last moments influenced the jury heavily. Bush asked for the trial to move to a different location because of news coverage. The court decided there was no unfair bias. The jury found Bush guilty on all counts. He faced charges including 2 counts of first-degree taking of life, an attempt to take another life, serious harm attempts, unauthorized entry, theft with a weapon, and serious theft with force. The jury noted factors that made the case worse. His past convictions, more than 1 loss of life, and that 1 victim was under 15. He received sentences that included the maximum penalty for the 2 counts of first-degree taking of life. For the other counts, he received 78 years in prison. In May 2011, he got those added prison terms for the attempt to take Gina's life and related acts. He appealed the maximum penalty, but lost that appeal in 2018. Michael Jonathan Carlson had a difficult past. Before 2009, he had a record of serious wrongdoing. He was convicted in Texas for a theft involving a weapon. The court gave him a sentence of 99 years. He served part of that time. Then he was granted parole. That chance led to worse outcomes. By 2009, he was wanted in Texas for breaking his parole. In 2009, Carlson lived on a property in Marana, Arizona. He lived there with Rebecca Lou Lofton, 52, and Kenneth K.R. Alleman, 49. Routine life turned into a horrifying event. Carlson took both Lofton and Alleman against their will. He tied them up. Then he caused their passing. He burned their bodies in waste pits on the property. Later, authorities found what remained. This set off a major investigation. Investigators linked evidence back to Carlson. He was arrested in connection with the case of Lofton and Alleman. In 2012, the case went before a jury in Pima County, Arizona. The prosecution said he had held the couple captive, ended their lives, and tried to hide what happened by burning their remains. The jury found him responsible on 2 counts of the most serious unlawful taking of life charges and 2 counts of holding someone against their will. His past record and the details of what happened led the jury to choose the harshest punishment. On August 31, 2012, they decided he was eligible for that level of sentence. By September 12, 2012, they officially recommended it. Later in 2012, the judge agreed with the jury's view. Carlson received the most severe punishment for those acts. He also got extra years for holding the 2 people against their will. As of June 11, 2025, Michael Jonathan Carlson remains under that sentence in Arizona. The next victim was mid-breath, mid-sentence, mid-hit, when everything went dark. Alan Matthew Champagne was born in 1970. He grew up in Phoenix. Public records say little about his family. His early years showed instability. He struggled with substance use from a young age, and by his teen years, his behavior had taken a darker turn. At 19, he was sent to prison for taking someone's life. He served 14 years for that. He was released in 2005. He stayed out of news until summer 2011. That year, 2 people went missing. 32-year-old Philman Tapaha, and 26-year-old Brandy Nicole Hoffner. Investigators found Tapaha had a troubled relationship with Champagne. At that time, Champagne was using heavily. Police think he invited both to his apartment. Tapaha was hit by gunfire in the face. Hoffner was using a bong when he applied a cord around her neck until she passed away. In March 2012, police came to Champagne's mother's home to serve a warrant tied to a major incident. He locked himself inside. He discharged his weapon about 24 times without a clear aim. He surrendered when his ammo ran out. His partner was rescued. The yard was not checked then, even though the two had been missing for months. While jailed, he met many times with an officer undercover as a private investigator. He asked for bail money. He said he would return to the yard and move the buried remains. In one talk, he said, "This is my problem, know what I mean." In March of 2013, a landscaper working for the new homeowner of his mother's house found a buried box in the yard. Inside were two well-preserved bodies packed in lime and wrapped in blankets. They were Tapaha and Hoffner. His trial was in 2017. The case said he used a gun on Tapaha and a cord on Hoffner. He packed their remains, used lime to speed up breakdown, and hid them behind his mother's house. The suggested motive linked substance use and jealousy over Tapaha, and perhaps a plan to silence Hoffner. The key witness was his partner, Elise Garcia, who saw both events. Forensic proofs linked him to the scenes. The case also noted his record, gang ties, and threats he made to others. In his defense, he maintained he was innocent. His lawyer said Garcia had reason to lie. She was offered a deal for a shorter term in return for her help. He was facing the highest penalty. In June 2017, the jury found him responsible for Hoffner's passing under the top category and responsible for Tapaha's passing under a lesser category. He was also found responsible for holding them against their will and hiding their remains. In September 2017, he was given the highest penalty for Hoffner's case. He also received 24 years for Tapaha's case, plus extra years related to the other convictions. He appealed. In August 2019, the Arizona Supreme Court confirmed the rulings and the penalty. They rejected his claims about improperly admitted statements. As of June 11, 2025, he remains in a cell awaiting the final outcome. Benjamin Bernal Cota was born in 1980 in Phoenix, Arizona. Court records at his trial show his age. His home life was troubled. His father, Manuel, drank too much and often left. Benjamin and his siblings had to take care of themselves. Their mother, Bertha, had suffered abuse and was distant. She rarely showed care or support. The family moved often. Manuel lost jobs repeatedly. Neither parent pushed the children to stay in school or join activities. Substance use was common at home. Benjamin began using substances at a young age. His older siblings said he always struggled with them. This issue stayed with him. In December 2003, Benjamin worked for a couple in Peoria. Victor Martinez was 73, and his wife, Guadalupe Zavala, was 40. They hired him to help with home updates. On December 30th, he waited until they left for work. He then put a plan into action. That evening, when they came home, he surprised them. He struck Victor with a hammer in the garage. He then used a sharp object on Guadalupe. He caused severe wounds. After these actions, he wrapped both in plastic bags. He hid them in a closet in the main bedroom. Investigators think he did this to steal. He pawned 2 of Guadalupe's bracelets on January 3rd. He also took money from the couple's accounts on January 5th and 6th. He even invited friends to stay in the house afterward. He warned them not to enter the main bedroom or answer calls there. He stayed in the house for a week. He used their things. He sold some appliances, including the water heater. Family members asked where the couple was. He made up false stories. On January 6th, relatives noticed the pickup truck was gone. The water heater was missing. They then found the wrapped remains in the closet under clothes. Police found Benjamin at his mother's home in Phoenix. He had the couple's pickup truck. A pursuit followed. He threw a bag of illegal substances and his wallet from the vehicle. He crashed the truck and tried to run. Officers caught him soon after. In his wallet were Guadalupe's ID and social security card. That linked him to the couple. Pawn receipts and banking records added proof. Investigators also found his shoes at his mother's home. Tests showed DNA matching him and the couple. He faced charges for 2 counts of planned acts that caused loss of life, 2 counts of theft with a weapon, controlled substance possession, and fleeing from officers. At trial, a jury found him guilty on all counts. During sentencing, the state asked for the harshest penalty based on how severe the harm was. They noted his past serious offenses and that he was on release when this happened. They also mentioned Victor's age, over 70. The jury's decision was split. For Guadalupe's case, they chose the maximum penalty. For Victor's case, they chose life imprisonment. They added extra prison time for the other charges. Benjamin appealed. In 2012, the Arizona Supreme Court kept the verdicts and sentences. It agreed with the penalties given. In July 2023, his federal petition to review trial issues was denied. As of mid-2025, he remains held under maximum penalty conditions. Next is one damaged photo. One deep wound from the past. One fatal decision. Leroy Cropper grew up in a very difficult environment. His relationship with his father was either distant or completely missing. As he got older, the emotional pain he carried never really faded. Over time, it pushed him toward risky choices that led to prison. By the mid to 1990s, he was serving 6 years for possession-related charges. While in prison, he kept some family photos with him. One of them showed his biological mother. That picture was one of the few personal things he had left from a painful past. On March 7th, 1997, Cropper was in cell 258, Building 26 at Perryville State Prison. That day, 2 corrections officers, Brent Lumley and Deborah Landsberger, came to search his cell. There had been reports about missing cleaning supplies and they were investigating. During the search, they found banned items. These included a homemade blade, tattoo tools, and a list of names that looked suspicious. Cropper was visibly upset during the search. His anger grew, and it seemed like memories from his childhood started to come back. Things got worse when one of the officers damaged the photo of his mother. That moment deeply affected him. After that, Cropper was placed on lockdown. He felt powerless and humiliated. Later that night, he started planning to escape. He spoke to other inmates through the vent. They helped him get a steel blade and gloves. They also helped unlock his cell. Once free, he made his way to the control room. There, he came face to face with Officer Lumley. Cropper rushed at him. He used the blade to seriously harm Lumley. The two struggled for a couple of minutes. Cropper held Lumley against the wall until he stopped moving. After it was over, Cropper left the weapon behind and returned to his cell. He tried to clean up and hide what had happened. Officers later found Lumley, but he did not survive. In April 1997, a grand jury in Arizona charged Cropper. The charges included a serious offense related to Lumley's case, planning the act, and possessing banned items in prison. On May 4, 1999, Cropper admitted guilt. His plea covered the act, planning, and contraband possession. The state pushed for the most serious punishment available, pointing to how cruel the act was and the fact that it happened while he was already in prison. But in 2002, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that only a jury, not a judge, could decide whether someone should face the harshest sentence. Because of that ruling, Arizona had to redo Cropper's sentencing. A new jury reviewed the case. They agreed on 2 main points. Cropper had a past conviction, and he committed the act while in prison. They didn't all agree on whether the act was unusually cruel. Still, the jury voted for the harshest penalty again. On November 3, 2000, a judge had already given him that sentence after finding 3 key reasons: his past convictions, the fact that he was in custody, and how harsh the act was. The later jury confirmed the same result. His conviction included the most serious level of unlawful act along with related charges. The Arizona Supreme Court reviewed everything again in 2010 and confirmed the sentence. Cropper is still behind bars today, waiting under that sentence. He was about 22 years old when it happened in 1997. He is now around 51 years old. His life remains confined within prison, shaped by what happened that night. Jose Alejandro Acuna Valenzuela grew up in Phoenix, Arizona. He was friends with Edgar Segala as a teenager. That friendship ended when Edgar gave evidence against him in a legal proceeding in 2008. Court papers offer little about his parents or siblings. Records show he was found guilty of a serious offense before the later case. In 2008, Acuna was already involved in illegal activity. He was found guilty of trying to cause life-threatening harm to a woman named Perla. That earlier incident played a major role in the later charges. After serving his sentence for that offense, he held anger toward Edgar Segala for providing evidence against him. On June 9, 2011, Edgar Segala, 24, and Perla were leaving an ice cream shop near 75th Avenue and Indian School Road in Phoenix. Acuna saw them there. He had told Edgar he did not want to see him again. He then left and got a gun. He returned outside the shop. He fired the gun at them. The first shots struck Edgar and led to injuries he did not survive. Acuna then moved to the other side of their vehicle. He fired again and struck Perla in the upper back. Perla was badly hurt. She later had 2 surgeries. She survived those wounds. What led Acuna to act this way? It was not a sudden argument. The reason was revenge. It wasn't about theft or some senseless outburst. The state's team confirmed this reason during the trial. Acuna faced several charges. One was the most serious charge related to Edgar not surviving. Another was for trying to cause life-threatening harm to Perla. He also faced a count for firing a gun toward a building. He faced a count for improper use of a weapon. During the trial, the state's legal team presented evidence of his earlier serious offense. They also showed that Edgar had given evidence against Acuna. The court treated these points as reasons to consider capital punishment. First, his prior offense. Second, that the action leading to Edgar not surviving was done for revenge because of Edgar's testimony. His defense team objected to some points. They tried to remove a juror who worked with the Maricopa County Attorney's Office. They said that could cause bias. They also said that the instructions about revenge were unclear. They asked to move evidence about his past offense out of the trial. The Arizona Supreme Court later decided that the instructions were clear enough. It also decided that allowing the past offense evidence was not wrong. In 2014, the jury found him guilty on every count. They also agreed on the 2 reasons for harsher punishment. This led to the most severe penalty for the charge related to Edgar not surviving. The sentences for trying to cause life-threatening harm to Perla, firing the gun, and the weapon offense were set to happen at the same time as that most severe penalty. The Arizona Supreme Court reviewed the case automatically. It looked at jury selection fairness. It looked at whether evidence about past offenses was allowed. It looked at whether the instructions were vague. In September 2018, the court confirmed the convictions and the penalty.